Okay, so we are going to start by continuing with last week. This is maybe a good thing about doing something over 2 weeks is we get to get carried away with tangents and the behind the scenes, and then we get to actually get involved in the details and finish the material as well. It usually has been either or, and it's generally the first one rather than the second one. It's just the way things seem to go in this class. But so we are going to get back inside the material and try to finish that off. Depending on how much time we have left, if at all, we may get onto something else. All of it's related, and we're going to see that what we're talking about today, what we talked about last week, what we may get to talk about, what was discussed in the video that some of you have seen that asked about whether today's class would be a continuation. It's not a direct continuation, but it all comes back to the same thing. And the thing that it's coming back to is, what is Shavuos, what is the Torah, and therefore by extension of what is the Torah, what is the giving of the Torah all about? What does it boil down to? And once we get in touch with what it's really all about, there are a lot of other things that are automatically going to fall into place as a result. And things that are going to become a lot more meaningful and a lot more perhaps resonant. Because all of a sudden we see what things have to do with each other once we understand the behind the scenes and the soul of it all. So we talked last week a lot about what the soul of Torah is. Torah is a means by which we can connect to Hashem, etc. And we talked about the fact that Avos Yisrael, loving our fellow Jew, is a very important preparation to Matan Torah, Matan Torah translates to the giving of the Torah, but really, on our part, it's not a preparation to the giving of the Torah. On our part, it's a preparation to the receiving of the Torah. Hashem takes care of the giving of the Torah. It's our job, and Hashem's giving it. We don't have to go too far out of our way to get it. Hashem's coming to us to deliver it. We have to put ourselves in a position in which we are open and in tune to just receive what's being given to us. We don't have to go out of our way. We don't have to run after it. We have to work pretty hard to study it. But this concept of Matan Torah and what's happening now with this, and again, Matan Torah is very important. Shavuos is important. Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, the receiving of the Torah. It's true that the Torah was given on Mount Sinai more than 3 millennia ago. Hashem gave it then, and it was being studied for millennia before that. So what is so exciting about Shavuos this year? And again, as we know, we mentioned this many, many times. There's a verse in the Megillah, in Megillah Esther, that says, Hayomim ha'ele nizkarim b'na'asim. These days are mentioned and done. What does it mean these days are done? And the Mizrach Maggid explains that when these days, Hayom ha'ele nizkarim, means both mentioned and recalled. When these days are recalled and commemorated appropriately, in a real way, when we work on getting in touch with what these days are about and we commemorate them, get involved in them and do what we're supposed to do the right way, then na'asim, they are made again, they are made to happen again. And all the things that happen behind the scenes, all the spiritual things that were associated with the original event get repeated again for real. And this allows us to experience what was experienced then. We may not necessarily be consciously aware of the experience, but this experience is happening. And not only does it happen again, but we know there's an expression that comes from the Gemara that says, Ma'alim b'kodesh. When it comes to positive, when it comes to things that are holy, we always go up. We always grow. We ascend. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be just in terms of that rule, that we say that each year when it happens to a greater degree and it's happening on a higher level and allowing us to access things that were never accessible in years past. Because if we weren't saying that, then what would be the point? Matan Torah happened every year for millennia. This has happened thousands of times before. If we're saying that every year on Shavuos, when an individual decides to get involved and to do Shavuos properly, then he experiences the giving of the Torah again and is able to receive the Torah once again from Hashem. What would be the point of that if it was just the same as last year? And it's only going to be of any value if it's something new, if it's happening on a new level and allowing a person to reach a new level of interaction and relationship with the Torah and with the Creator who places himself inside of the Torah. So each year, it brings us, if we do it properly, each year we have an opportunity to go deeper and higher in our relationship with and connection with the Torah. So this is why Matan Torah is exciting. This is why Shavuos is exciting. Yes, we can learn about all the things that happened then, 3,300 plus years ago. But we can also, if we get involved, we can then understand why, or not why, but the fact that it didn't just happen then, but everything that happened then is happening now again this year on Shavuos. For real. We don't get to feel it the way that they did. They got to see the lightning and hear the thunder, and as in fact, they got to hear the lightning and see the thunder. Go wrap your head around that, whatever that even means. But that's what it says. That's what happened. And that's another whole discussion, another whole can of worms, exactly what that means and how and why. But so it was easy for people at the original giving of the Torah to experience it consciously and to be inspired and all these things. But that's not what it was about. It wasn't about the thunder and it wasn't about the lightning. It was about the fact that the Creator was giving something to the people that gave them an opportunity to achieve a connection with that Creator. An opportunity to take the Creator and literally place the Creator inside the cells of our brains, physically, to take the information that it says, Anon nafshi ksavis Yehavis, the first word of the Aseret Dibros, Anochi, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. The word Anochi, again, is a very unusual word. It's not really technically even Hebrew. It's there as opposed to Ani, which is the traditional Hebrew word for I, because it is an acronym. Anochi, Aleph Nun Chaf Yud, which stands for the words Anon Nafshi Ksavis Yehavis, which is Aramaic for I, Anon Nafshi, my soul, Ksavis, have written Yehavis and placed inside these words. So Torah's information. Now whatever this means, and it's not something we can necessarily relate to per se, but it's something that we can accept as true, Hashem takes himself and places himself inside this information. Again, that's kind of abstract. We can't really relate to what that means because it's not a usual or natural thing, but we can accept that it's the truth. Hashem says, I placed myself inside this information. Information is something that we can physically store inside our brains to the extent that our brains will generate new physical tissue to be able to process and store this information because it's physically stored in there. And Hashem puts himself inside this information, Anon Nafshi Ksavis Yehavis, as a means by which we can literally store Hashem physically inside our brains. That's what happened at Matan Torah. Now, we have the ability, so this is an opportunity, Hashem has given us an opportunity which cannot be achieved any other way other than study of Torah to achieve a extremely intimate and deep connection with Hashem, with God, with the Creator, with the divine infinity, whatever we want to call it. They all mean the same thing. Whatever works, whatever resonates for any given individual is good. So, and this is what happened then, and it didn't just happen once. And as we said, it would only be relevant and valuable to know that it's happening again if it wasn't just a repeat. Right, now, take a class, for example. If you go to a class and you know the teacher's going to just say the same thing that they said every class prior, after 2 or 3 classes you get the hang of the fact that it's just the same thing again, you're going to stop coming. Right? Now, if the teacher is sufficiently talented to be able to teach the same material but to take you deeper and deeper and deeper every time. So they don't have to change topic and change subject, but they're talented enough and capable enough and good enough to be able to take you deeper and deeper inside and give you a deeper and stronger connection every time to whatever the subject matter is. You'll keep coming because it just keeps getting more and more amazing. And that's what happens on Shavuos every year. Again, it's not as simple because we don't get to consciously experience everything that's happening, but it is happening. This Torah is something by means of which we can connect with the Creator of everything in a way, with a connection that cannot be achieved any way other than Torah study. And every Shavuos is Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah again. And the Creator is not incapable. The Creator is not boring. The Creator doesn't repeat things. If it's possible for a person to be good enough and capable of doing something again, but each time making it sufficiently better for it to be worth our while to keep coming back, certainly the Creator is capable of that. So every year on Shavuos is Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, but each year it is so much deeper and so much more real that it's worth the Creator's while to do it again and again every single year. For thousands of years it's happened every year on Shavuos. So Shavuos is an opportunity for us to, particularly if we're in tune, and it's something that happens, it happens regardless. The more we are prepared and the more we are in tune with what's going on, the greater value we get to extract from what's happening. The more we get to experience it and the more benefit we get to have from it. So this is Shavuos. Shavuos is something that is really very momentous. It's a time when we have the opportunity, or when we are being presented with something that will give us an opportunity that no one ever had before. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have the chance to connect with Hashem the way that this year's Matan Torah will allow it. And Avram Avinu didn't, and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and the Tanoim in the Mishnah, and Amoraim in the Gemara. Every year it gets deeper, it becomes new. It becomes not just a repetition, but it becomes something that is sufficiently more valuable than what was there before to justify the effort on the behalf of the Creator to do it again. So this is Shavuos. The question is, how do we prepare for Shavuos? Obviously there are a number of things. Number one is obviously, or one of the most important things is going to be doing exactly what we're doing now, learning about it, getting in tune, understanding what it's about. And there's another thing, as we discussed last week, and that is Ahavas Yisrael, unconditional love of our fellow Jew.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's better than playing something else on loud. Threw me off a little because my voice sounds different over there than it does to me over here. But so number one is, or one of the things that's important is to learn what's going on, understand, and another one is Ahavas Yisrael, strengthening our unconditional love for our fellow Jew. Now, what's the relevance? Of course, we understand that that's a foundational part of Judaism is Ahavas Yisrael and unconditional love for our fellow Jew, etc., etc. But why is that specifically relevant to Shavuos? Why is it that that is described as being a specific preparation for Shavuos? We know that we start off every day, as particularly people who follow the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, know that it says Nachon Loma Kodem HaTfilah. It's correct, it's appropriate and recommended to start the day by preceding our prayer by first saying, I accept upon myself the proactive mitzvah of loving my fellow as myself. This is foundational. Prayer is the foundation of our day. And Ahavas Yisrael is the foundation, or the thing that we do in preparation of prayer, which is in preparation for our day. So clearly it's important. But we aren't told that if you want to prepare for Pesach, Ahavas Yisrael, you want to prepare for Monday, Ahavas Yisrael, you want to prepare for Wednesday, Ahavas Yisrael. Now that's of course true. All of that is true because Ahavas Yisrael is number one. Right? We have the story of Hillel in the Gemara. Someone came to Shammai and said, teach me the Torah in 1 foot, and Shammai was known to be strong and demanding, and said, get out. Came to Hillel and said, teach me the Torah in 1 foot. What did Hillel say? Don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. This is the whole Torah, the rest is commentary. I'd love to get sidetracked again on that because we could talk about that all week without eating or sleeping, but I'm going to practice some self-control. So we know that this is what it's all about. This is what we're supposed to do on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday and Shavuos and Pesach and Sukkot and Chanukah and Shabbos and weekdays and night and day and everything else. But why is it that it is specifically described as being a preparation for Shavuos of all things? And we go back to the original example, which was the original Matan Torah, the original time that the Torah was given at Har Sinai, Mount Sinai in the desert, 7 weeks after the Exodus from Egypt. And the Torah tells us, as we discussed last week at length, that on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, on the first day of Sivan, almost a week before the giving of the Torah, it says, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, and the Jewish people in the singular, and he camped there, in proximity to the mountain. Why does it say he and not they? We're talking somewhere in the ballpark of 2 to 3 million people. It's definitely not an individual. And the answer is because Ke'ish echad b'lev echad, the Jewish people were unified and as one. Now again, that's amazing and beautiful and a very nice thing to put into a graphic quote on social media. It'll probably get a lot of engagement because it's an incredible, beautiful thing. But again, why specifically before Har Sinai? Why before the giving of the Torah? It should be like that every day. Why did it actually happen then? Why was it something that happened to an unusual extent at the point in time when the Jewish people reached Mount Sinai in preparation for receiving the Torah? And the answer is, it comes back to the soul of Torah. And by extension, the soul of the giving of the Torah. What is Torah about? Torah, if we were to define in an empirical way what Torah is information. That would be the most simple, literal, precise definition of Torah from a surface perspective. And it's true. Torah is information. Torah defines itself as information. So the pasuk says, Ki hi chachmaschem uvinaschem la'enei ha'amim. It is your wisdom and comprehension, literally, in front of the other nations. So Torah is information. But that's not all that Torah is. That is true, but it's not the full truth. The full truth, as we said, is it's information that contains the Creator inside of it. It's a tool by means of which we can become one with the Creator in a way that we cannot do any other way. Now, just brief disclaimer, that's not to say that we don't have any other opportunities to become one with the Creator. Ahavas Yisrael, love your fellow Jew. All the mitzvahs are a way to unite with the Creator and become one, but the unity the oneness that we achieve with the Creator through Torah study is very unique. When we perform a mitzvah, we don't take the Creator and literally, physically store the Creator inside the cells of our bodies. That's something that's only achieved through Torah study. So, the soul of Torah is really, at the end of the day, if we had to sum up in one word, the soul of Torah, it would be God, Creator, etc., etc., etc. All the various terms for the same thing. That's what Torah is at its core, inside. That's the soul of Torah. What's the soul of us? The divinity that's inside of us, Elicit, the godly soul, etc., etc., etc. Divine spirit, whatever we want to call it. Neshamah, as it's called probably most frequently in Jewish circles. At least in the circles of Jewish people who are familiar with traditional Torah study. It would be referred to most frequently as the Neshamah. So the soul of us is the Neshamah. Now, and the Zohar talks about it. It's not only in the Zohar, but the Zohar says it most directly. That we were about to. Before, when we came to Har Sinai, when we came to Mount Sinai, because this was a a place and a time that elicited our essential truth as individuals, when our essential truth comes out, we automatically become one. Because our essential truth is one. That's not to say that we're not unique. That's not to say that each of our godly souls doesn't have its own nature and tendencies and gifts and challenges with which it's partnered in its relationship with the animal soul and the body, etc., etc. But what it is at its core is all one. So if we want to prepare for to receive the Torah, and not just to receive the information, but to receive what's inside the information, if we want to prepare for God to say, I am going to give the Torah to you all over again. I am going to give you an opportunity to connect with what's inside of the Torah, aka me. That's the Creator, not me. In a way that has never been possible before, in a way that's absolutely unprecedented. To get in touch with that and to be able to experience that, we have to bring out our own essential truth, who we are. When we focus, and a lot of times, now, in an ideal world, what we will do is focus on that truth. What happened at Har Sinai, right? We came to Mount Sinai, it was an atmosphere of, let's call it an atmosphere of essential truth. That essential truth within us came out, and we were one as a result. That's always the ideal way to work things, is to go from the inside out, from the bottom up. The reality of life is that it doesn't always work that way. Right? If I need to get into exercising for the sake of my health, I should motivate myself to go, but sometimes it gets to a point where I know, you know what? I'm not motivated, and I'm not going to get motivated. I've just got to go and do it, and after doing it 2 or 3 times, that'll get me motivated and I'll want to go again. Sometimes in real life, the reality is we don't always feel the essential truth, because essential truth can be elusive. But we can always take action. So sometimes we have to take action that reflects the essential truth, and that brings it out. So if we want to get to this moment of multifaceted essential truth, let's call it, on Shavuos, when our essential truth unites with the Torah's essential truth, which is the essential truth, aka the essence of the Creator, all of which is one, the best way for us to elicit our essential truth is to take actions that reflect it. What's the most notable thing that happens when we get in touch with our essential truth? Unity. Because we are one at our core. When we get in touch with our essential truth, one is an automatic result, oneness. So if we are not in a position where we can just snap our fingers and get in touch with that and feel that, what we can do, again, is work backwards. We can take the actions that reflect it, that will bring us back to the core. So we work on our Avas Yisrael, we work on our unconditional love for our fellow Jew, which will elicit its own soul. And what is the soul of unity? The truth of that oneness. The truth of the oneness is what is going to generate and elicit a practical oneness. The truth of the oneness is the fact that we all have the same thing inside of us. Our core is the same at the end of the day. So if we want to, the best preparation, or one of the most important things we can do in preparation to receive the Torah on Shavuos, to take our connection with the Creator through Torah up a level, because God's giving it again in a way that's new and novel, which justifies the fact that the Creator's doing it again, even though it's been done thousands of times before. If we want to put ourselves in a position to be able to get the value out of that, we've got to wake up our essential self, our Neshamah, our divine soul, etc., etc. The best way that we can do that, if we're not in a position to really feel it, which honestly, I don't want to upset anybody, and I'm not judging anybody, but I think it's safe to say that probably most people are not in a position to just snap their fingers and be in touch with that in a real way. is to take actions that reflect it, that make it happen. So, unconditional love of our fellow Jew is something that is an expression of our essential unity, which is an objective fact that we naturally are predisposed to be out of touch with. When we take actions that reflect that, that bring it out, because what we're doing is waking up our essential self through our actions, we are placing ourselves in a position to be able to receive the essential self of the Creator that He is giving to us once again in an unprecedented way on Shavuos. So now, we're going to discuss a number of stories that happened, or a number of different expressions that were said about Avas Yisrael, about unconditional love of our fellow Jew, and look in a bit more detail. I think we mentioned them very briefly in the last 45 seconds of last week's class as we were trying to finish, as we always do. We're going to get into that in a little more detail today. So we have 3 different stories, and we are at, inside the text, Tesvav, which is towards the top of the right column on page 7 in the Hebrew. It's 15, which is, okay, in the English, the pages are not numbered. Oh, okay, it's a bit backwards. Okay, no, it's right, it's just right to left instead of left to right, I think. That's the way it's going. Yeah, okay, so if we take the English right to left, we're on the second side of the first leaf, the paragraph the Baal Shem Tov taught. Okay, so there's a story we're told that the Baal Shem Tov taught that when it comes to, and this is something we actually did discuss in a bit more detail last week, so we're not going to get so deeply into it. We talked about the story of the Baal Shem Tov and his students, and we got quite deeply involved in the value of the simple Jew. Now again, that's not a value in being, I guess we could say, it's a relatively blunt term, but taking the term literally, not for the kind of the connotations and the things that people associated with it, but a very literal translation of the word. This is not a value in being uneducated when it comes to Torah. It's a value of the simplicity in realness and commitment and dedication that naturally tends to go with not being overly sophisticated, which naturally tends to come together with academic achievement. And as we discussed last week, the ideal scenario obviously is to have as advanced a level of Torah knowledge as we are capable to achieve, and with that to retain the simplicity in terms of our dedication and realness and commitment, and to have both. But the reality is that there is a natural predisposition for them to be inversely proportional. There is a natural predisposition that as one becomes more advanced in academic achievement, there is a natural predisposition to lose that simpleness, to lose the simpleness and purity of commitment and dedication that a person has when their commitment is all out, without the depth of understanding that comes with it. Obviously, there's great value in having a deeper understanding, because deeper understanding brings new kinds of commitment as well. But there is a value and quality to the simpleness of that pure, unwavering, unquestioning commitment that tends to exist more frequently in the absence of extreme academic achievement, let's say. So the Baal Shem Tov was known for his particular affection for simple Jews. And bringing it back to something just a little that we didn't get involved in last week because we got carried away with the soul of it, which we tend to do pretty much every single week. So there is an expression that there's a midrash that says that Tefillin de Mariam Maksiv Buhu, what's written in the Tefillin of the Creator, Right? We're told that Hashem, unlike other kinds of rulers who rule, give edicts and tell people what to do and then sit on their high horse and just watch other people do it, Hashem tells us to do the things that Hashem himself does. So Hashem fulfills every mitzvah that he tells us to do. Obviously, the way that Hashem fulfills a mitzvah is going to be a little different to the way that we fulfill it. Hashem's not taking leather straps. When we're going to get into the mitzvah of tefillin, Hashem's not taking leather straps and leather boxes with parchment inside and strapping them on his arm and his head. First and foremost, because Hashem doesn't have an arm and a head. At least not the kind of arm and the kind of head that we have. So now, of course, at the same time, we know that we are created in the image of divinity, which means that we have a body that does reflect certain things that exist in divinity, that exist spiritually. The midos, chesed, droya, yemina, gvura, droya, smala. It says chesed is the right upper limb, gvura is the left upper limb, etc., etc. But Hashem doesn't literally have a hand or an upper limb as we know it. Hashem doesn't have a head the way that we think of a head. So Hashem is, whatever this means, that the Medrash tells us that Hashem is putting on tefillin, the Medrash says, what's written in Hashem's tefillin? Umi ka'amcha ki Yisrael go yachad ba'aretz. Who is like your people Israel, a unique people in the land, in the world. So Hashem's tefillin are about, the Jewish people are Hashem's tefillin. That's what the Midrash is telling us. Now when it comes to tefillin, there is tefillin that we put on the arm, tefillin that we put on the head. Arms, hands get things done, heads think. So what does this represent, the two different tefillin that Hashem puts on? If we as Jews are Hashem's tefillin, there are some of us whose primary focus is academic, the head tefillin, and there are some of us whose focus is primarily action-oriented, doing mitzvahs, getting things done, helping people. And those people are the hand tefillin, Hashem's hand tefillin. Now again, a disclaimer that the Rebbe always makes when coming from this angle is that no one, no matter how focused they are on academic achievement, is exempt from fulfilling mitzvahs. Although halacha does modify a person's obligation to observe certain mitzvahs based on an extreme involvement in Torah study. Someone whose Torah study is at a really extreme level to the extent that this is what they do, what they live and what they breathe and what they sleep, then someone that's defined, the halachic term is Torasoi umanasoi. This is this person's occupation. It's this person's Facebook, it's this person's Instagram, it's this person's Twitter, it's this person's everything, you name it. Whatever it is, whatever the things are that we get carried away with, and when we're not busy doing something else, this is what we revert to. For these people, this is Torah. And for people who it's literally every second of their day and night, their requirement when it comes to certain mitzvahs is modified by the Torah, but no one is exempt from mitzvahs. Certainly no one's exempt from tzedakah, from Avos Yisrael, absolutely. No one's exempt from mitzvahs. The relationship to mitzvahs is somewhat modified in some circumstances, but no one's exempt from mitzvahs. And no one, no matter how committed they are to mitzvahs, no matter how much a person is a arm tefillin, they are not exempt from Torah study. The question is, what's our primary focus? Because there's no question that different people's circumstances and talents and gifts and etc. predispose them to making the greatest contribution in different ways. There are certain people who are not going to be a fantastic shliach on campus, but are going to be a fantastic Rav. And there are people who are never going to be able to sit and learn Torah for 16 hours a day with real focus for all of those 16 hours and to attain a breadth and depth of Torah knowledge that someone can come to them and ask them a question and they will have an answer because they have an incredible grasp of Torah knowledge. Not everybody, the vast majority of people are not even close to being able to actually practically do that. But many of us who are not able to do that are able to achieve very great outcomes in different things. Whether it's going in business and having the opportunity to bring Torah to people who no one else can reach. Whether it's being a shliach on campus, whether it's opening a Chabad house, whether it's being a homemaker, whether it's being whatever it is, it doesn't make a difference. It's irrelevant. What's relevant is the fact that we are unique and each of us has gifts that predispose us to achieving the maximum output in different ways, which means that we shouldn't all be trying to do the same thing. But we all have to study Torah and we all have to do mitzvahs. The question is, what's the focus? What's the balance? The amount of Torah studied versus the number of times someone put tefillin on someone else is going to be very different from someone who's doing mitzvahim at the Kosel to a Rav who's sitting and learning Torah and answering questions. They're both doing what they are, if they're both in tune with who they are and doing what they really should be doing. They're both maximizing what they are, the gifts and talents that they have, and maximizing the contribution that they can make. Their contributions are very different because they were designed by the Creator to be different tools to achieve different elements within the global outcome, which is making the world divine, dir b'tachtonim, Mashiach, etc., whatever we want to call it. So we have hand tefillin, we have head tefillin. Different natures, different primary purposes. And the Baal Shem Tov's primary affection was for the hand tefillin rather than the head tefillin. Both of them have a bracha, etc., etc. Which one do we put on first? When we put on tefillin, the hand tefillin comes before the head tefillin. Because at the end of the day, as the Mishnah says, Lo hamidrash ikar ela hamaisa. Action is the most important thing at the end of the day. So, the Baal Shem Tov would emphasize this a lot, the fact that the hand tefillin go on before the head tefillin, because the Baal Shem Tov had a very special affection for people who were not tainted by academic achievement. And again, as we discussed last week, the ideal outcome is to have the academic achievement, but to remain untainted, which is an extremely difficult challenge. It's just the way it is. So because it's something that's uncommon to have to a very real degree, the Baal Shem Tov had a special affection for these simple people. Then we have another story that we mentioned also briefly last week, that about Reb Zusha from Anipoli, whose brother, Reb Elimelech of Lezhensk, told over a story about once when he was in proximity, he was in the presence of the Mizrach Maggid, and the Maggid said to him, Melech, that was his nickname, his name was Elimelech. You hear what they say in Shamayim, you hear what they say above, you hear what they say in heaven. I'm going to read out the exact words. Okay, it's not exact because this is a Hebrew translation of the Yiddish. That Avas Yisrael, what does Avas Yisrael, unconditional love for your fellow Jew, mean? Le'ehov Rasha Gomor Ketzadik Gomor. And the Yiddish would be, because the original story happened in Yiddish, to lib haben a Rasha Gomor azovi a Tzadik Gomor. To love someone who is a Rasha Gomor, someone who's would be defined and described entirely as being a sinner. This is not someone who sins, because no one's perfect. We're talking about someone who would be accurately described and defined as a person who is in their entirety a sinner, a transgressor, someone who is entirely involved in doing wrong things. To love such an individual the same way that we love someone who's on the other end of the spectrum. Someone who is a tzaddik gomer, someone who is entirely involved only in good. That's a whole new level relative to what the Baal Shem Tov said. The Baal Shem Tov didn't address sinners. The Baal Shem Tov wasn't talking about people who do wrong things. Certainly not people who would be defined as a Rasha Gomer, someone who in their entirety is someone who does bad, does wrong. The Baal Shem Tov was talking simple versus sophisticated, let's say. Simple versus advanced. This is a whole new level. And again, what it takes to... okay, so let's continue first and then we'll come back to what it's about at its core. then the Alter Rebbe's version, so we have here 3 generations. The Baal Shem Tov, Mizrach Magid, and the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe would refer to the Baal Shem Tov as his Zayda, his grandfather, because he was the teacher and mentor, the Rebbe of his Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe's Rebbe was the Mizrach Magid, the Mizrach Magid's Rebbe was the Baal Shem Tov. So we have here stories from the Baal Shem Tov, the Mizrach Magid, and the Alter Rebbe. So the Alter Rebbe is variety, and I'm going to do it inside just to make sure that it's precise. That Avos Yisrael is universal, it's for everyone. What does this love, how is it described, what does it mean? And again, we touched on this very briefly at the end of last week's class. Loving our fellow Jew, regardless of who they are, literally with the same love that we have for a sibling. Shehi ava atzmis, which is an essential love. Why do we love a sibling? Not because we decided to. Right? There are a lot of love-hate relationships between siblings. It's not uncommon at all for siblings to have a love-hate relationship. And probably when they're, 5 and 6 and 7, it's probably more hate than love. And then as they grow older and become a little more mature, hopefully it gets a little more balanced out. And hopefully as they get even more mature, it becomes love and not hate. But it's a relatively common thing. Why? Because we can have differences with our siblings. We can have disagreements. And depending on how mature we are, we can even have fights and resentment. But at the end of the day, we're siblings. And that doesn't go away. The fact that we have differences of opinion and we do things that annoy each other, the fact that my siblings and I do things that annoy each other and that we resent, doesn't make us not siblings. So regardless, at the end of the day, why? Because it's an ahava atzmis. These are the words that he used. It's an essential love. It's who we are. So that's something that's not going to be changed by details, by circumstances, by events. Nothing's going to change that because it's an automatic outcome of who we are. It's just the way it is. Now, in analyzing the difference, now we saw the difference between the Baal Shem Tov's version and the Mizrach Magid's version very clearly, right? And we're bringing it down, as we bring it down generations, we bring it deeper and closer and more relevant and more practical. So the Baal Shem Tov was talking simplicity versus simple versus sophisticated. The Mizrach Magid brought it down a level, another generation, and talked about even bad versus good. I shouldn't say bad versus good, because bad versus good could be defining the essence, which this is not, which is exactly what it's all about, which is why the love should be the same, because inside they're the same. But badly behaving or misbehaving versus well-behaved. The Alter Rebbe's, the way that the Alter Rebbe worded it, doesn't necessarily change things practically so much, but it gives us insight and brings it deeper. He's telling us that the love, it's not so much describing who we should love as much as someone else, because he speaks more universally. It says it's across the board, young and old, universal for everybody. And then he goes to talk about it more qualitatively, more in depth. It should be like a love of brothers, of siblings, which is an essential love. He's explaining why. What is Avos Yisrael all about? Why are we expected? Go tell someone to like someone that they don't like. I'm sorry, I don't like them. What do you want? Tell me that I should. You can tell me I should behave respectfully. You can tell me I should smile at them. You can tell me I should kiss and hug them. You can't tell me I should like them. I don't like them. Right? The same question is talked about Avas Hashem. The Torah says, "Va'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha," you shall love Hashem your God. I'm sorry, I don't. Tell me to observe the mitzvahs, tell me to speak respectfully, etc., etc. If I don't love God, what am I supposed to do? You're telling me to have an emotion that I don't have. So, let's go back. What's the verse that we read right before? And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might. Before V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, hear. Take in. Understand. Appreciate Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Empower yourself with information. Learn about God and the oneness and greatness of God. Hear it. Learn about it. Empower yourself with information. Now the word va'ahavta in Hebrew can be correctly translated in different ways. Va'ahavta can be translated as and you will love or and you shall love. The general way it's translated is and you shall love your God. It's a commandment. You shall love your God. But it can also be translated as and you will love. Shema Yisrael, if you hear Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, you allow yourself to learn and understand about the greatness and oneness of God. V'ahavta, you will love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. It's an automatic outcome. Doesn't mean that we can just snap our fingers and read a couple of sentences and Bob's your uncle. It doesn't work that way. Right? To get to a point where we actually really appreciate it to the point that it's going to change the way that we feel, that takes real hard work. It's a lot of learning, it's a lot of focus, it's dedication and commitment to working on the extent to which it's real to us, to the extent to which we connect with this information, which is not an academic thing. It doesn't matter how academically gifted we are, it takes hard work. It takes time and effort to get focused, to really think about it and work on it personally and individually, connecting with the information. And if we do that, Shema Yisrael, if you hear this and you connect with it, va'ahavta, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might. It's an automatic outcome. So you can't tell someone to love something if there's no reason. You can tell someone to act like they love someone or something, but if there's no reason why they should, you can't just tell them to. You can tell them to, but you can't realistically expect them to do it. If there is a real objective basis for why someone should love someone else or something, we can then say to the person, learn about it. Understand the truth. If you understand the truth, it will bring you to an appreciation that will bring you to have an emotional disposition towards this person. Right, let's talk about the reverse. It'll be a lot easier, unfortunately, because this is the nature of the world. Right, you have someone and they're really involved, they like someone or something, whether it's food, whether it's a person that's very destructive and it's not bringing them benefit. It's a relationship with a person that's bringing them down and being a negative influence. It's a relationship with food that's making them unhealthy, whatever it is. These are probably just the two easiest examples to pick on. I can tell someone, you know, you don't hang out with this person. Okay, TFS. I'm hanging out with this person, I enjoyed their company. If I sit down with this person, and thanks for sharing. It wasn't Hebrew or Yiddish. Torah from Sinai, there you go. So if I sit down with a person and explain to them, and explain it to them to the point that they start to realize, you know what? They start to see, this person really is having a negative effect on me. This person is having subtle influence that's causing me to be involved in things that are not making me happy, they're not bringing me value, whether it's physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is, they're all true. If I sit down with someone and get them to realize why this person is a negative influence and why they are losing out by spending time with this person, I've now given them a real shot at maybe changing their choices in who they spend time with. Because I've made them see it. I made this person realize and appreciate the fact that this other individual is having a negative influence on their behavior, on their state of mind, on whatever it is. Telling them not to spend time with someone they enjoy spending time with is not going to help. If I get them to appreciate the fact that they don't really want to be spending time with this person because it's generating outcomes that they don't want, then the person is much more likely to stop spending time with this person. The same is on the flip side, although it's a lot more challenging. It's easier to bring someone to realize why they shouldn't do something a lot of times than why they should, especially when it's something that takes effort. But if I can explain to someone why a particular individual, get them to appreciate how good a person this is, and how much value they stand to gain personally by becoming closer with this individual, what they stand to gain by spending time with this individual, if I can do that effectively enough, this person may now go out of their way to try to form a connection with this individual because they realize why they should. If I tell them, go hang out with so-and-so, and they're like, so-and-so is boring, I don't like so-and-so, whatever it is, go hang out with them. Isn't going to help anybody. If I can get this person to appreciate, you know what? I think I want to try and get to know this person. I think I want to spend time with this person. I want to hang out with this person. Now there's a chance it'll actually happen. And this is what the Psukim are telling us. Shema Yisrael, hear, learn, understand whatever you can about God, and V'ahavta, you will love God. And when it comes to loving our fellow Jew, it's the same thing. Telling someone to love someone else is like, thanks, shkoyach, right? I know I should. I also know I'm human. I also know that this person really grates on my nerves and I can't stand them. And no, I don't like them. Yes, I'm a civil human being and I try to be respectful. I don't love them. But if I can work on getting to a point where I really appreciate, number one, my own true value, and I can learn to love myself for the reason that I really should be loving and valuing myself. And that's a reason which is equally true of every single person in this room. If I love myself for the divinity that's inside of me, I will equally love every single other person who has that same divinity inside of them. So, the same way that, and there are two parts to it, practically speaking, realistically speaking. The same way that we said that Avas Yisrael is a way to get to the essential truth inside of us that prepares us to receive the Torah from Hashem. Within, narrowing it down within the context of Avas Yisrael itself, again, ideally we should work inside out, down from the bottom up, which is to build that recognition of why we should be really loving and valuing ourselves, and by extension why we will automatically have ideally an equal love and value for someone else, or appreciation of someone else's value. That's in an ideal world the way it should be. Practically speaking, sometimes we have to balance that with making an effort to do that, and at the same time, there's an expression that says, "Achrei ha'maisim nimshochem halavavos." Our hearts are drawn after our actions. Right? When we smile at people, when we make people smile, it makes us feel happier. Now, how does that make sense? A person who's happy smiles. True, but the fact is that when we surround ourselves with positivity, both by doing it ourselves and getting other people to do it, it starts to affect the way we feel, and that's drawn after the way we act. And the same is true of Avas Yisrael. So when we make an effort to not only be civil and respectful, but to really have positive relationships and interactions with people, that can also be helpful, because it's not as much as ideally what we should do is focus on our recognition and appreciation on the Shema Yisrael part of it, on understanding why we should really, or getting to a point where we automatically love everyone else the same as we love ourselves because we have an appreciation, sufficient appreciation for the truth. That's ideal approach. But it may not necessarily be entirely practical to focus only on that, because that's something that takes a lot of time to see real, tangible progress. And again, as I've said many times, every tiny little bit of progress is immeasurable in value because it's achievement. And it's true. If it's real progress, it's invaluable. If practically speaking, the best approach really in the world that we live in as human beings who have not only a divine soul but also a Homo sapiens animal soul, we're also human beings, we're not just a godly soul. Perhaps the most holistic and practically effective approach, both for the short term and the long term, is to combine the two together. Because in the long term, right? If we want to look at what we can achieve throughout the course of our life, just focusing on the behavioral is going to have a limit to how far it can take us. It's important to be nice and to, to do good things and to exemplify Ahavas Yisrael practically, love for our fellow Jew, practically speaking. But that in and of itself is never going to get us to really have a true valuation and appreciation and love for other people anywhere near the extent that we value and love and appreciate ourselves. So what we have to do is try to really become aware of and appreciate and value the truth, which will bring to a whole new kind, it's a different league, it's in a different ballpark, the kind of love for our fellow that we can have when we appreciate the truth, when we appreciate the fact that I should really ideally be loving myself for the divinity that's in me, and that same divinity is in everyone else. So that in the long term will bring us to a place that just the practical approach will never get us. But the bottom line is that to get there is hard work, and to make real large quantities of progress in terms of the measurable outcome, not in terms of the value, because the value of every tiny little bit of progress is infinite. But in terms of the magnitude, the measurable magnitude of the outcome of how far we've progressed, you're talking lifetime to get there. So for the short term, we have to combine that together with taking the actions and making an effort to actually practically, behaviorally exemplify Ahavas Yisrael and love for our fellow Jew, unconditional love for our fellow Jew, love for our fellow Jew to the same extent that we would have for our own siblings, which is an essential love because our siblings are family, they're part of who we are. So, and this is a primary part of preparation for Matan Torah because this revolves around who we are at our core. That's what this is all about. And the receiving of the Torah on Shavuos is all about our individual core of who we are, and that becoming one with the core of the Creator through the core of Torah, which is the core of the Creator, and a way that we can bring our own core to be one with it. And by extension of that, bring, again, as we said, our physical bodies, the physical matter that our bodies are made of, can become one with God through this. All of that revolves around what the soul of Torah is, what the soul of each of us is. And the soul of each of us is the same as the soul of everyone else. They're all individuals, but what they are inside is the same. Where they come from and what they stand for is the same. And this is what Matan Torah is all about. It's about the soul of the Creator, the essence of the Creator, the essence of us, and the essence of Torah all becoming one. The essence of us automatically leads to an unconditional love, appreciation for each other. So that is perhaps the foremost preparation that we can make to receive Torah on Shavuos. Because there's nothing else that we can do that is as strongly associated with and will bring it out to the practical as much. Nothing else will practicalize, exemplify in a real, actionable, tangible way our individual core, our essence of who we are. As the thing that will most exemplify that in a real, practical, tangible, actionable way is unconditional love of each other, because that is a literal derivative and outcome of our own essence. And I think we actually finished the material exactly on time, but that's because we did it over 2 weeks. So, in Yirtzeh Hashem, I think we're on next week, same time, same place, and looking forward. And everyone should experience Kabbalas HaTorah b'simcha b'pnimius, receiving the Torah joyfully and internally, and have a good Yom Tov.
Thank you so much.